Hello, my name is Matthew Pfeiffer with MattPfeifferCoaching.com. Welcome to my YouTube channel. On this channel, I create videos and content about toxic, narcissistically abusive relationships. If you have a question that you would like for me to answer, make sure you send it to justaskmatt at MattPfeifferCoaching.com. Again, that is justaskmatt at MattPfeifferCoaching.com. So make sure you keep the email 2 to 3 paragraphs max, and you're also very direct and to the point of what your question actually is. If it's too long, if it's too lengthy, unfortunately, I will not be able to get to it. Also, make sure you hit the subscribe notification and the bell notification so you're notified each and every time I upload a new video. I upload new videos on this channel 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. Also, if you need more in-depth help outside of these videos, you can always join my YouTube membership. I have a couple of different tiers and a lot of different trainings, a lot of different courses, and some opportunities for one-on-one sessions and group sessions available. So make sure you guys check that out when you get a chance. With all that being said, let's get into today's email. Today's email comes from a person who is struggling with co-parenting with a narcissist. And if you are co-parenting with a narcissist, or if you've had an experience with co-parenting with a narcissist, you know that can be very, very difficult, because one of the things that we have to understand about narcissism is that if they were controlling throughout the relationship, they're not going to want to let go of that control, even though you break up or even though you go through a divorce. And then they engage in what's called post-discard abuse, where quite often they want to continue to abuse, they want to continue to control, sometimes through the child, sometimes through trying to gain proximity to you. And so let's get into today's email. Let's break it down and see if we can offer this person, and possibly you as well, some help. So this email reads, "Hi, Matt, your advice is wonderful. I've struggled for years with co-parenting with my ex, who my therapist has stated feels is a narcissist." So it's very good that your therapist recognizes it, because quite often therapists don't, unfortunately. So it's good that the two of you guys are on the same page and you can get the help that you need. This email continues, "When I get a text from him, my sympathetic nervous system goes into action." That's very, very common. People during exchanges. One of the things I do want to mention about this, though, is that you're likely, and for those of you who do exchanges with the narcissist, you're likely never going to feel comfortable with them. That's not a bad thing. You have to understand that however long you're with this person, all the abuse, all of the control, everything that you've gone through with this person, your body does not want you to fall for it again. Think about, to give yourself some credit, right? Think about how many times you've fallen for their antics, for the manipulation, how many opportunities, how many chances you've given them, right? Your body, your nervous system, your emotional system, all of it is sending you a reminder, don't do this again. So the problem isn't necessarily that you feel uncomfortable around this person, right? We want to make sure that it doesn't become so overwhelming that we are not making good decisions, right? So that's key. So this isn't necessarily a terrible thing. I just want to make sure that we're clear there. When I need to do an exchange, it's a triggering experience, right? Just like what we just talked about. I've been struggling with anxiety, not knowing what he will pull next, as it always seems like it's something. One of the things that we want to be clear about is that that's true. We need to give ourselves more credit here. That's true. He's always up to something. And I want to put a bookmark here, because we're going to circle back to this. A lot of times we say things and we don't realize how powerful and how accurate we actually are. We need to start to empower ourselves and actually sit there with that. And then we're going to be able to construct some boundaries around that. So let's put a bookmark there, and then we'll circle back to that. Initially, I tried doing everything by our orders and was accused of being too rigid and not a good co-parent. So I'm going based on this email. I'm assuming that this accusation is coming from him, not the court. So I want to be very clear about this, and we're going to talk about this in depth here in a second. I don't give a fuck. He can accuse you of anything that he wants. Go by the court order. We have to understand that the court orders are there for a reason. What are they there for? For your protection. That's the reason why it's rigid, because it needed to be rigid, because he's a prick. That's the reason why we go by the court order. So for those of you who struggle with this. A lot of times people struggle with this because of codependency and people pleasing, and we want to be seen as a good person. And then the narcissist, and this is how narcissists play this out, right? How come we can't just be friends? How come we just can't do this? How come we just can't spend Christmas together? And all they're really trying to do is gain access to you. How come we can't just be friends for the kids? Right. And then they engage into everything that we talk about, right? They start engaging into post discard abuse and that sort of thing, right? And so go by the court orders. He's allowed to think of this as rigid. He's allowed to have his own opinion of what this is. He's allowed to think that you're a bad co-parent, right? But the court order is there to protect you, right? What is court for? Court is there to set and enforce boundaries. The court order is your boundary. And when you come off of it, now this is pro him. Now he's able to get back to his antics. Let's get back into the email, then we'll circle back to that here in a second. I was keeping everything in writing and responding to businesslike, and then accused of being too cold. Who gives a shit? Be cold. He deserves that, right? Why would we be warm and empathetic with someone who was abusive to us, right? There was a reason why you needed to be cold and businesslike, right? You were accused of being inflexible and unapproachable. It's one thing if the judge says this. We don't give a shit about the opinion of someone who is abusive and toxic, right? Because we have to understand that when they engage in that, and this is the reason why, this is the big reason why I don't allow for people to, I'm not getting on you, I'm just talking about in general, why I don't allow for people to point fingers at the narcissist the entire time. We have to understand codependency too. We have to understand our own behavior. We have to become very self-aware of our own behavior. The fact that we care so much about what this person actually thinks of us, right? And then let's go back to that bookmark where I was telling what I was talking about, where you said that he's always unpredictable. We have to sit with that. He is unpredictable. That's the reason why we empower ourselves with the court order. That's the reason why we empower ourselves by being cold and rigid and keeping a distance away from someone who we don't know what to expect. And that's the reason why your nervous system won't allow for you to feel comfortable around this person. It's letting you know up front, don't trust him, period. Quite often people think that the narcissist has good intentions because sometimes they're good. The good that you see from a narcissist is really just the bad in disguise. The good that you see is the bad in disguise. If I had a way to describe this a little bit better, there's a reason why we teach our kids, do not take candy from strangers. Why? Because the good that you see, the candy or the puppies or whatever, is really the bad in disguise. They have ill intentions later on. So instead of thinking of this person as sometimes they're nice, sometimes I can talk to them, sometimes and it's unpredictable, right? Let's just say this person is a prick, this person is an asshole, this person is narcissistic. I don't know what to expect, so therefore I'm going to remain cold and rigid and stick to the court order to protect myself from him. Let's get back to this email because I know you have some concerns with your child in doing that, and I'm going to get to that here in a second as well. He was cold and businesslike. He took me back to court over seemingly everything. He's allowed to, right? And you being nice won't stop that. What will happen though, right, is that he could take you back to court, and because you came off of the court order, guess what happened? You now no longer have the protection. So what happens is that when you come off the protection, what happens, and you go off the court order, and then you try to say how bad this person is, what happens is that now the judge looks like, well, wait a minute. If this person was so bad, why were you able to be flexible? I gave you a court order to go by. If this person was so bad, why did you come off of it? And so when people go through this experience, they say that courts don't like victims. I agree with you. They don't. But we have to understand why they don't like victims of abuse. Because in the eyes of court, and for those of you who don't know, I used to be a liaison between family court and CPS and dealt with in cases like this. What happens is that in court, everybody is a victim. Everybody is a victim in court. The person who just went on a spree at whatever public venue, right? I did it because I was in fear for my life and this and that, right? The person who was actually abusive, I did it because this person pushed me to, and I had to protect myself. Everybody in court is a victim. What the court and what the judges are looking for is who is the adult, who's making the mature decisions. And the mature decision when it comes to co-parenting with the narcissist is to not come off the court order. It's to remain on the court order. It's to set boundaries. And so when you go to, if this person was to take you back to court and you were to say, Your Honor, I stayed on the court order, like you said, I made sure that we exchanged children. I made sure that the child was available for phone calls, right? That's all that we do. That's all we need to do, right? And then when the judge takes you back, or when this person takes you back to court, they have no reason to modify. Right. And so we have to understand that court orders are there for your protection. Let's get back into this email. To me, back to court over seemingly everything. I've loosened up my boundaries just a little to do exchanges at each other's homes. Don't do this. Right. Remember, your nervous system is telling you not to. Respect your nervous system. Right. So and I'm going to go into the reasons where you actually pointed out the reasons why you shouldn't do this, right? So you already said that he's always up to something, right? And then guess what happens, right? So you go on to say exchanges at each other's homes, but after he recently accused me of stealing, so you knew, right, internally, your nervous system said that you don't feel comfortable around this person, and then you try to be nice, you try to be flexible, you do exchanges at their place, right? And then all of a sudden they accuse you of stealing because they're, like we said, they're always up to something. The good that you see is the bad in disguise. Does it seem like it's okay to do exchanges? I mean, most people are able to do that. Most couples, most divorcees are able to do that. Not you. When you're dealing with a narcissist, not you. I don't care if you have sisters, brothers, and cousins who are able to have Christmases together and do exchanges at each other's house, not you. You're in a different circumstance, right? Someone who has no problem with lying, no problem with taking you back to court, no problem with creating chaos, no problem of accusing you of things, right? So I now know not to enter his home anymore and wait outside. I would take this one step further, right? I would go back to the court order if you have exchanges elsewhere, and or take somebody else with you. Take a witness, take somebody with you, right? So to protect yourself. Seeing him in person makes me very uncomfortable. And although I try, I find it hard to even look at him and answer his chatty questions. And this is also the reason why we want to make sure we take somebody with us. If I'm not smiling, he will ask why I'm in. So you don't owe him an answer. Right? You're there to pick up and drop off the child, right? You don't have to answer any of his questions. He badgers me and antagonizes me. And this is also the reason why I'm encouraging you to take somebody with you. With his physical proximity, probing questions. You can also look at and talk to your lawyer about this doing exchanges at school. He drops off, you pick up, right? You can't avoid every single pickup and every single exchange, but that's what I have a lot of people that I work with do. One person drops off at school, the other person picks up, and then you go on from there, right? And then that starts that person's week, or that starts that person's exchange, because this person is clearly trying to use this for more control. I have a difficult time putting on a show, but I know this is what keeps the peace. It actually is not keeping the peace. This is the fool's gold that happens with people who struggle with people pleasing and codependency, right? You say that this is keeping the peace. It's not. He's accused you of stealing. You've gone to court multiple different times. You don't feel comfortable. This is not keeping the peace, right? So we have to begin to be very aware and actually get into the presence to realize that we think that we're keeping ourselves safe, and we actually are not. We have to get more realistic about what's actually happening here. You're not safe. How do I know you're not safe? Because of everything that you explained, and also your nervous system is also telling you this, right? So one of the things I would highly, highly recommend is for you to talk to a therapist or a coach about your people pleasing and your codependent nature, right? Obviously, you can work with me in one of my group sessions. I also have group sessions for codependency, but we have to begin to realize that these tendencies that you have aren't working and they are not keeping you safe. As a matter of fact, they're putting you in more danger, right? And we're not even realizing it. I would like to have that, meaning the peace. I'd like to have that for my child and show her that mom and dad can interact like mature adults. You can't. We need to lower our expectations of what this actually is happening. You're lying to your daughter. That's what's happening. You're actually not in peace. And here's the reason why I'm being so very direct. What a lot of people don't understand about children, because people think, and he may have been the one to convince you of this, right? What happens is that our children, most people understand that we model the behavior for our children. And so your daughter is witnessing everything that you just mentioned. So you keeping the peace is showing her that the behavior that he's doing to you, all of the antics, accusing you of stealing, making you feel uncomfortable, his physical proximity, you're telling her that this behavior is okay. It's okay for us to be treated this way. And there's nothing that I can do to keep myself safe. And what happens through this process is that when your daughter sees that the person who's keeping me safe can't even keep themselves safe, she doesn't feel safe either. And what happens through this process is that the lack of safety now becomes her norm. And then we repeat the cycle as adults. The other thing that we have to understand is that, going back to what you were talking about in terms of your nervous system, our children attach not only to the behavior that they see, but to your nervous system. So if you feel like you're walking on eggshells, your daughter feels like not only is she walking on eggshells, but she feels like that is normal. And that's how we repeat the cycle of abuse from generation to generation to generation, right? So it's very important that we begin to get this, to take care of this people pleasing, because if you can take care of it, then you can correct it with your daughter, and we can end this cycle. So this email continues. There seems to be so many different opinions about how to co-parent with this type of person. How do I interact in a way that doesn't make myself uncomfortable? We have to set boundaries, healthier boundaries. So I mentioned a couple of different resources. Another resource that I would highly, highly recommend. I have a course that's very, very affordable, right? That talks in depth about co-parenting with a narcissist, right? From point A all the way to point Z. And I even incorporated a lot of things with parents. So make sure you check that out. It's on my website, but it should be linked to my bio as well. What are appropriate boundaries that both honor myself and my child? I mentioned a lot already in terms of not going to their house. Make sure you stick with the court order. Even if this person calls you rigid, we have to begin to let go of this, being concerned with how he thinks of you. It's important for you to be okay with being the villain in his story, right? Of course, he's going to think of you as the bad person, but guess what? You putting yourself in too close proximity is only putting you and your child in harm's way. I want my peace and can't continue to feel this overwhelming anxiety every time I need to interact with him. You're interacting with him too much, right? You can't have both. He's caused too much damage, right? We have to understand that when we have been abused, and I'm not sure the extent of the abuse and the control and the manipulation that has happened in this situation, right? When the two of you guys were married, but I can only imagine by the behavior of now that the fact that this relationship is over, that the relationship was probably far worse. And so we have to understand that you putting yourself in proximity of someone who was abusive and controlling and manipulative towards you won't work. You can't have both ways. You can't have peace being in proximity with someone who mistreats you. It won't work. Your body won't allow it. That would be like sitting in a house fire, saying and hoping that to keep yourself safe. It won't work. your nervous system, your alert system, everything about you is the adrenaline is going to start shooting through the roof. The cortisol is going to start shooting through the roof because you're not safe in a house fire. Same thing here. You're not safe around him. Thank you very much for writing in. If anyone else would like to write in, if you have questions for me, make sure you send it to justaskmatt@mattpfeiffercoaching.com. Again, that is justaskmatt@mattpfeiffercoaching.com. Make sure you keep the email 2 to 3 paragraphs max, and you're also very direct and to the point of what your question actually is. If it's too long, if it's too lengthy, unfortunately, I will not be able to get to it. With all that being said, thank you very much for writing in. Thank you for tuning in, and I will talk to you soon.